ones here. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Welcome, everyone, to the December 13th, 2021 regular school board meeting. Mrs. Cahill, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Grant,
Here?
Mr. Carpenter,
Present.
Mr. Guido,
Here.
Mr. Leeds,
Here.
and Mrs. Stone.
Present. Nice and loud, just for you.
You're welcome.
Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance. Item 1.3, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, we have one deletion, 9.4, the contract with UTS, because we no longer need that contract.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 1.4, approve the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Section 2, discussion and comments from the board, starting with Mr. Leeds in Legislative 2.1.
I've got one item that's interesting to us, I believe. Last Tuesday, the senators answered school districts' complaints about tax valuation changes in House Bill 126. On Tuesday, they withdrew the as-introduced version and substituting even stronger safeguards for property owners. The Senate Ways and Means Committee accepted a omnibus amendment rescinding the original bill and instead requiring school boards not only to adopt a resolution for counter complaints, but also to have proper evidence suggesting higher valuations, and banning school district appeals from boards of revision to the courts, and having property owners and opposing school districts from adopting arm's length private pay agreements in which owners pay school officials not to file complaints or to dismiss them once filed. So we need to look in that a little bit deeper, see what happens. I don't think we have any, but who knows? We can have some tomorrow. So, but that's a little shaky.
Yep.
It's the only thing I've got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mr. Guido, Butler Tech.
I did attend the ACTE National Convention in Louisiana, New Orleans. Had a good time. There were 4 or 5 presentations there from teachers and staff. It was a good event. Some pretty neat stories. We were in the airport, and people were coming up to some of the staff that presented and say, you know, you've got to come out here and show us what you're doing, get us used to a little bit more of what's going on. So good event as usual, so very excited to go. The Natural Science Center is still on track. Steel should be, I don't know if they started it today or not. It was dark when I came up the hill, but it should, the steel girders are going in. Foundation is all complete. All the wiring and infrastructure is done. And so everything's on track there. So it should start being framed in and maybe look, at least be able to tell what it's going to look like on the site. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Finance?
We did not have a meeting this evening, and this will be my last. I have nothing to report.
All right. Anything from MEA?
Yep. First of all, Brett, Leslie, thank you again for everything you've done. I've been on the board as long as I'm the president. We went through some rough times and a lot of good times, and you guys were very influential with getting us back on track again after a few bumpy years. So, again, bargaining, I want to thank both sides of the bargaining team with our contract. It took a team effort, it went smooth, it went awesome. I know a lot of locals, presidents have talked to me, they're jealous of how we handle things, and I just said, hey, that's the right way, that's how we do it. And, so we have something very special, and I appreciate that. I know members appreciate your flexibility on your end of it, and it showed with the vote. I think it passed 99.5%. So again, I want to thank you guys for building this school. It's special. Okay?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
That is it. Section 3, recognition. Mr. Buzzkirk?
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I just want to take this time, I know we have already talked a little bit about this being the last board meeting for Mr. Brett Guido and Leslie Stone. They were both elected in the fall election of 2009 and have served successfully on this board for 3 terms since 2010. Over the year of their terms, they've faced some challenges, but they've navigated through them and helped guide this district in the right direction. I just want to personally, I've only been here for about 6 months working with you, but I wanted to share that last spring when the job opened up, as I began researching the district, there was one theme that always was mentioned when it came to Monroe local schools, and it talked about how just amazing Monroe had for a school board, how supportive, they worked with the team, and they always did what was best for the district and the kids. And I know that both of you are a really big part of that. And as Mike said, you've been through some challenging times, but you have worked really hard to make sure we're going in the right direction. And I can assure you that we will continue the good work that you guys have started. And I just wanted to thank you again personally for bringing me here, hiring me. I appreciate that. And I know that you guys, although we're saying goodbye formally today, Leslie will be continuing on the Butler County ESC board, representing Monroe for that board. And Brett will continue on in his role at Butler Tech. So hopefully he'll come back occasionally and report all the good things going on at Butler Tech.
Once a month.
To ask the bond question too, right?
Hopefully he won't heckle us from the audience, but
No, but I will.
but he probably will. So again, I just wanted to thank you again for your service. Everyone here appreciates all that you do, and I know that some other people have some things to say, but I just wanted to again thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
On behalf of, just on myself, and Tom and Tim, you guys could chime in as well. I just wanted to thank you both for your service to the school district. I know when I got onto the board 6 years ago, I looked to you. You guys kind of nurtured me, kind of brought me along, being do things proper as a board member. So I appreciate everything you guys done for me. So I plan on doing my best. I'm going to pay it forward.
You already are.
And do the same thing to Debbie and AJ that you guys have done to me along the way. So I wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for the district and for me personally as a board member. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your next endeavor.
Yeah, thanks.
Very true, very true.
Tim or Tom?
Okay.
anything?
I think, both of you have been very dedicated to this community, to this school, and to this board. And you guys have done one whale of a job behind the scenes to get some things going and to keep things going. And the staff has many times shown their appreciation by telling you what great jobs you guys have done. And you kept a lot of us out of trouble from time to time. So, but Dave told me that every month you got 3 minutes on the board to talk. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and man, this thing's so awkward. Well, I am telling you guys thank you, but no, like Dave said, I came on 8 years ago, and when I did, we were in a bad place, I would say, as a district, but it was your guys' leadership, along with Mr. Leeds, that really helped get Monroe out of that, right? It wasn't me. You know, like, I was this new guy. I didn't know what was going on. But I've always looked at you guys as, like, the board leaders. Like, you guys have been here longer than I have. You guys have seen more stuff than I have. So I've always appreciated the, I don't know, the mentoring, I guess, that you guys have given me. So you will be missed, but I appreciate you guys, and thank you for being my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Back at you.
Hey, I would like to say something. So I've shared with many my personal perspective of how much I will miss both Brett and Leslie. And I've been with other schools and I've worked with other boards. And this is the first time I've seen a board work so well with genuine respect and care for each other and for those who report to them. But both Brett and Leslie were brand new to the board, or fairly new to the board, and I have to tell the story, even though we want to forget this, but I have to tell it because it's just something you don't want to forget, really. Both Brett and Leslie were brand new to the board when, within a very short time, it was discovered the school was heading towards fiscal emergency and eventually was placed in fiscal emergency. And we had to borrow $3.1 million from the state, and we paid it back over 5 years. So you're put in a position to explain, how did this happen? And this is a public school, and understanding school finance and explaining to your community, well, how do you do that? How do you explain? And a situation like this would make most people not just step away, but run. It is just so much stress on your personal life and your family life and your professional life. But they cared so much for this district and these children, these families. They stayed and watched how decisions were taken over by the Emergency Commission. And they listened and they learned, and they were humble and they were kind. And even with the commission taking over decisions, Brett and Leslie continued to be there for us and be there for this community. So this kind of thing takes very exceptional people, and you really can't understand how someone can be so committed and want to help when it invades your personal, social, and professional life so much, but they did. I think it was their influence on this board and their hard work and supporting all of us that we came out of fiscal emergency within 2 years, and I suspect that broke all records in the state. State associations took note, and OSBA invited our board to present at their annual conference one year to share with them, from a board's perspective, how do you navigate fiscal emergency as leaders and community members? And I remember that room being packed, and you all told your stories. And I think it helped many other schools. And so it's not just your contribution during the early years that has made a difference here, but you've influenced how this district has evolved since that time. School boards can make or break an organization, and both Brett Guido and Leslie Stone, through their individual ideas, positive attitude, listening, searching out, and brought the best out in people. They know how to bring out the best in people, their selection and support of leaders. These decisions will leave a permanent mark on this organization and community. Working with and for them, just know they know what they're doing. And this is a big deal in any organization, but in my mind, especially a big deal in a public school, which is influenced by so many different people from so many different directions. So I could go on, and I'm thankful they stayed so long that we are now well on our way, where the main focus is how do we grow our students into being the most successful graduates in the state of Ohio. So we say goodbye now, but their contribution will remain and will be solidly interwoven in this school and community for years to come. Thank you, you too.
Thank you all.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
So you will be missed, is the bottom line.
I appreciate it, yeah.
All right, we will move on to Section 4, Communications, seeing that there are no comments from the public. We'll move on to Section 5, Presentations. Mr. Buskirk.
First up, we have Mr. Prohaska. He is going to talk about the high school course description. changes in the high school course of study. As January starts scheduling?
Yep.
Yep. Can't believe it.
Well,
Next
good
year.
evening. It's good to see everyone.
You're happy today, aren't you?
I'm feeling really good for a lot of reasons. Feeling healthy. About this time last month I was sitting in the back corner not feeling too good, and it's been a long month. Before I start talking about the program of study, we had a great week with our band, our concert band our night. Our choir is phenomenal. I know we talk a lot about the sports around here, but I can't say enough for what Luke Brinkman's done for our kids in the arts and what Brandon Longyear is doing as well. It's incredible work. And they've, I often tease Luke about being like our own Mr. Holland's opus. I mean, just what he does for our kids and how he's expanded that program is huge. I think just getting that shout out to you guys is important for you guys to know that. Just very quickly, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. You guys have the what was called the program of study, now called the Future Ready Playbook. Being a former football coach, you would think I would come up with this, but it was actually Daryl Forrest. I want to give her credit. She's like, we keep talking about Future Ready around here, and she's like, this is our playbook. I'm like, it is, Tara. I'm like, it's perfect. So she's like, I hope you didn't mind. I changed the title. We're not going to call it the program of study anymore. So, I mean, we definitely have been talking to our kids about Future Ready. Whatever that stage is, if it's college, if it's work, if it's military, if it's going off and starting your own business, if it means, before you graduate, I'm going to work on an associate's, or if I'm going to go to Butler Tech, whatever it is, it's Future Ready. And that playbook, when I first got here, and I'm now on year 7, that was, Jody would agree with me, that was in pretty bad shape. And it's really taken on life of its own. It really it's packed with a lot of information. It gets our kids ready to go in whatever direction they want. So we have highlighted areas for you to look at. Instead of just showing you the whole thing, we highlighted areas like we do every year to show you what the changes are. There's not too many major changes. Last year we did not offer AP Calc. We are putting that back on the books. We hope that we could make that work, but as things go by and we get into January and we start looking at numbers, that'll be a big part of bringing that back. Jody wanted me to make sure we talk about something that's coming down the road for the class of 2025, and I'm just going to read from a school law review that we just received. After several delays, Governor Mike DeWine signed the highly anticipated Senate Bill 1 into law on October 28th of 2021. Section 4 of the bill was signed as an emergency measure and is effective immediately. The remaining sections of the bill will be effective January 27th of 2022. A key provision in Senate Bill 1 is the requirement that the high school students complete a half unit of financial literacy. The course may be taken as an elective or in lieu of a half credit of mathematics. If the student elects to take financial literacy as part of their math requirements, the credit cannot take the place of Algebra 2 or any other course that the state board requires as an end-of-course examination. The new requirement will apply for students who enter 9th grade on or after July 1st, 2022. And my apologies, I said the class of 25, I meant the class of 26. Students enrolled in non-public schools are not required to take financial literacy unless they are participating in state scholarship program. A related provision of the bill establishes new licensure requirements for teachers who instruct the financial literacy. Beginning in 24-25, teachers must have an educator license validation to teach financial literacy. This state board is tasked with adopting additional requirements for the license validation in consultation with the new council that they are required to establish. Teachers who hold a valid license in social studies, family, consumer economics, consumer science, or business education are not required to obtain the license validation. So I gave you a lot of information. In a nutshell, we currently have a half year of government. We currently have a half year of econ, and they're taking that there in their junior year. So a lot of what's in the financial literacy in this Senate bill is what we already do. So we will replace economics eventually with this financial literacy piece. We believe we're going to stay with, as of right now, we're going to stay with the same teacher, which what I just read to you, with the social studies teacher, we wouldn't have to create any more they wouldn't have to get any more credentialing to take on this course. And further, what we're hoping to do now, the issue that it does cause us is that we become, if you're looking for an honors diploma, since this is an elective, we're going to make this an elective. We're not going to put it in the math department. It's going to be a standalone elective that is a requirement, which we do have other electives that are requirements. Our issue becomes we might be short with getting honors diploma in social studies because you need to have four credits. We'll be able to get that. We're looking at ways to get sociology on board. We're not doing that just yet, but we're going to get there with sociology. We're looking at that as an online course. So if a kid needs to get that half credit, to get that 4 credits for the honors diploma in social studies, we'll make sure that they get there. Now, some kids that won't affect at all because they take AP government, they take AP US history, then they take the government, then they take psychology. They could get it in different ways. But if you're on the normal track, it might be a little bit harder to get there, but we'll make sure we give them an opportunity to get that honors diploma correctly. But I just want you guys to be aware that is a major change that's coming down the road. But I feel like because of the way we've had things set up, we're in pretty good shape. We just have to change the name, maybe a few changes when we get to curriculum, but it's going to be pretty close to what we're doing already. So, like I said, you guys will have some time to look at that, and I know when we come back in January, you guys will hopefully give it the thumbs up, approve it, and then we're going to move on our way with mid-January to the end of January is going to be our period where we go about getting the kids signed up for classes. And then, as Mr. Buskirk and Mr. Canzero already know, and Mrs. Long, that will give us a good idea where we're at with numbers and if we need to potentially bring on board any more additional staff. Okay, but we've talked about it. We know we think we're going to need some help, but we don't want to make any decisions until we have the actual pretty hardcore numbers that tell us what we need. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Any questions for me?
Tom, you said what grade level are they taking that class?
They're taking it as juniors.
Okay.
There's some schools are looking at doing it earlier, doing it as freshmen. I don't think that's the place for it. We've had a lot of, even before we broke government used to be a year-long class, but this is our first year as a semester class. We've always had our econ in this junior period, even before we did the split. It's a really good place for the kids. I don't want to even move it to their senior year and back ourselves up against the wall if we have any issues with kids not passing. It's a really good place right now. It should be an easy transition for us to just move from econ into the financial literacy right there in that junior year.
Yeah, the first versions of that bill were to have freshmen and sophomores take that, so I appreciate that we've moved it at least to the junior year. Working in finance, I can assure you that kids don't have a general understanding of some of the most basic things that we would consider. I'm going to pick on my son a little bit. He got his first actual paycheck because his first job was always direct deposit. He didn't even know how to deposit a check in the bank. They struggle with an understanding how a check works. If you write a check, what happens to it? And, it might take 3 or 4 days for that money to actually be removed from your bank account. And we see that a lot at my credit union where, insufficient funds because they wrote a check, went to the store and spent whatever they did and didn't realize that, that money was already, so just general stuff like that is a real struggle for kids today, especially in the electronic world.
And as a team, we've talked to other area schools, we've talked to our own teachers, and even today I was talking to Mrs. Green, and she definitely, like you said, it's a great year to have it in the junior year because kids are getting jobs, they're driving, they're starting to see the money's coming in, what do you do with it, why would I save, all that, it starts to become very real to them. So it's really a good place for them to have it.
And then also, I think I shared with Holly, maybe Robert, but, most financial institutions do offer financial literacy programs geared towards kids. So I would recommend you to look out at some of those, to have it complement your program. And, like at my credit union, we have somebody specific that comes into schools and puts on whatever
Yeah.
they want there. So it can complement, the state required curriculum.
And just so you know, we do have a math course that complements this already too, and that's math and money management. And Mr. Connie has brought in bankers to talk to the kids, so those things are going on. I mean, it's right up what you're telling us. I mean, we're right there with it.
And then also Junior Achievement has a program as well. So there's like
Okay.
tons of resources out there for schools, because I know every school district is struggling right now with how do we add this piece to it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of help out there.
We feel like we're in pretty good shape. So things are going on. And then just the last thing I want to mention is Dara LaForest, Kara Talbot, our new counselor, and Carrie Long have done a fantastic job. I just want to let you guys know with this, if there is a place in education that has changed a lot in the last 5 years, it's the counseling office. With all, you guys are aware of it, with all the changes that are coming from state, it's constantly, I wish we could go a couple of years where just things just stay the same, and we could get our feet under us and make sure we got all our ducks in a row. But we're constantly, I hate to use this, but the plane's flying and they're working on engine. They've done a pretty good job about getting out on that wing, working on engine as we're moving. So I just want to make sure I get a shout out to them, because they've been fantastic in the work that they're doing. Okay? All good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Next up, Jody Long's going to be sharing with our latest report card data.
Trent's going to put that up there for me.
Trent, could you open the attachment?
Thank you. Okay, so before we get started, just want a little disclaimer here about the 2021 report card. As you all know, the pandemic really affected education. You will not see as much reported, as much data reported. It might look a little bit different. It's a little bit lower than what we're used to. But because of the, attendance, low attendance rate, the variety of educational models that were being used, participation in state testing, those are all things that have affected the report card. And one thing that we, I think, need to keep in mind is that this is kind of like our new baseline. So we're going to take what we have and work with these results to move forward. So I'm going to start with Trent. You can go ahead and you can move it down to the highlight page. Thank you. I'm going to start with some of the highlights for our report card. First off, we're going to start with performance index. And the performance index, thank you. The performance index is, as you remember, or if you remember, it is the where it captures all levels of students and all the assessments. So this is our district performance index. Monroe ranked third in Butler County, right behind Ross and Lakota. So that's normally about where we fall in a normal year. So we are still proud of that. It is a little bit lower than what we're used to, but still very proud of it. One thing that is important to point out, just to put things in perspective, the impact of the pandemic. So there's 607 Ohio school districts. Only 8 school districts in Ohio raised their performance index. That's it. So that kind of puts things in perspective as to how this affected the districts across the state of Ohio. The next slide is going to show you, I'm going to talk a little bit about the schools, the individual schools. The high school, they ranked 5th in Butler County out of our high schools with a performance index of 64.9. And then on the next slide, you'll see that the junior high, obviously, we don't have all 15 junior highs up there, but the junior high was third in the county out of our 15 junior high schools in Butler County for performance index. And the elementary was 10th out of the 29 Butler County elementary schools with 87.9. So as you can see, we did okay. So we'll, like I said earlier, build on that and just move forward and make some improvements. Next, we have our graduation rate and our prepared for success. We were third for our 4-year graduation rate with 95.3, and then for the prepared for success component, 46.4%. That put us fourth in the county. If you remember, the prepared for success component is the one that talks about it, and there's a variety of things. This is not all of them, but ACT and SAT participation talks about, or they take into account the number of honors diploma that we receive, AP participation, AP exam scores, and then also CCP classes, when they, how many students graduate with at least 3 credits. So next, we'll look at improving at-risk readers, K-3. We were 5th overall in that, at 36.1. One thing about this that I do want to point out, and actually with all the testing, but this one especially was a little difficult because we had a lot of kids in VLA, and at the early grades, the test that we use for this is individual. So we had an army of teachers who called, the kids would come in, so they had individual, kind of like individual appointments with the kids who were in at VLA, and we got them in for the testing, and we did a really good job and got most of our K-3 students in here and got most of them tested. So that was kudos to the staff for that. They did a lot of hard work getting that done. So next, test results. We'll look at each just of the grades and kind of show a comparison of where we rate with similar districts and then also with our state. Before we kind of look through these, the trend across Ohio, most schools dropped about 10% in most areas, and we were the same. The other thing about our scores, and I think this is across the United States, is that math took the biggest hit, and that is true in our scores as well. Not every grade level, and subject, but a lot of our math scores were quite a bit lower. Some of our language arts didn't change too much. But we'll go on and look at, for 3rd grade, you can see where we fell with the districts, similar districts, and then the state. We're well above the state in all but I think one area. So 3rd grade reading and math, or math and reading, sorry. 4th grade, math and English language arts. And if you want to stop me and if you have any questions, I'm not going to read each of these. Next slide shows 5th and 6th grade, and 5th has science added in there, and then 7th and 8th. 8th grade has a science test as well, and then you get to our high school classes, and there we are, and how we compare with them across the state and other districts. So, next, moving forward, some of the things, this is not all of the things, but some of the things we're going to be doing in order to make improvements. We're going to examine our Tier 1 literacy instruction and align it with the science of reading research to ensure that we have the access for all students. Align our MTSS system across all buildings to support all students in meeting grade level standards and behavior expectations. Continue using our shared leadership framework to support our evidence-based decision making. And then we are, right now at the high school, they're working on an audit with Michelle Walker-Glenn from High Schools That Work. But we're going to do that, complete the K-12 audit of our math curriculum maps and instructional practices to make sure that our practices are aligned and we're focusing on the correct standards. And then the next slide just tells us a little bit about next year's report card, because it's going to look different. The grades are going away. They're going to go to a 1 to 5 star scale. There'll be 6 components, and those are listed up there. The achievement component will be based solely on the performance index. So in the past, we've had, each test has counted. This will be just performance index. The progress component will include 3 years of data, and then the calculation will weight the most recent year. So they'll have 3 years with a weighted the last year. And then the early literacy component is going to be expanded a little bit and changed to include the percent of students scoring proficient or higher on the 3rd grade reading segment of the English Language Arts state test. And this is not all, there's more, but we don't have all of the differences yet, all the changes, but as we do, we'll update you next year before the report card or during the report card presentation. So, are there any questions?
Jody, I got a couple of questions. First of all, when you say that our kids we had a lot of kids in VLA, what's the percentage of our kids versus Lakota and Talawanda and the rest of them?
I do not know the answer to that question. We'd have to look into it. But we
Okay,
could
then the
get,
biggest question is, parents are asking questions, doesn't make any difference what school system you're in. At the end of the day, these kids that went through the pandemic last year because and school was closed and everything else, will they be caught up before they get out of here, and when?
so when would depend on each individual child, to be honest, because they all learn at different rates, and they all have different gaps too in their education. What we need to make sure we're focusing on is not, we need to continue to move forward with things and intervene in the areas where we're seeing their gaps. That's why looking at the data at the TBTs, which is our shared leadership framework, is really important so that we can identify those students. Does that answer your question?
The concern is, when they go on to higher education after they leave here, or after they leave high school, are they going to have to go to remedial classes in colleges? Or are they going to get caught up in something that they missed here, or?
Hopefully we will, I mean, it's our intent to be able to catch them up, but I don't feel like I can give you the,
Is there going to be testing for that, I guess?
Is there what, I'm
Is
sorry?
there going to be testing to see that if they get caught up or not?
Yeah, we'll continue doing all of the assessments that we do now. We did add a freshman benchmark assessment this year, so that's one addition that we've done that we've never had in the past. So hopefully that will help us catch some kids. But, yep, our intent is that we will catch them up as best we can.
Okay, and the next question is, have we looked at what Ross is doing different than what we're doing?
I knew that was going to come out. I knew you were going to ask that.
We have, one of the things is, I mean, we do have different populations, and that's something we have to take into consideration. We have, and actually we're getting ready to look at some new reading materials, and I'm sure that's one place we'll call to see how what they're using. And we have done that in the past as well.
Okay.
So-
But to be fair, I mean, they have a very aggressive way of, I guess, working with students that are below their threshold for what they consider a good test score. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to add, how do I say
It
this?
should have an asterisk next to it, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
if you were to look at our course of study compared to their course of study, it's very different.
Yeah.
Our kids have a lot more offerings and they get a much more well-rounded education as they leave here, where theirs is pretty, they are, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. They really work hard and they're proud of that, and that's something that we need to look to, we're going to continue to strive to get there, but yeah, there definitely is some differences in their approaches.
And if you think about it over the past, not last year, the year before, we usually are right there with Ross on
Yeah.
almost everything.
Yes.
So, it's, hopefully we can get back there.
We will.
Yep.
Okay, so I know the pandemic kind of threw everything in a loop, but we finished our strategic plan. We were all excited about, like, oh, we're going to start seeing the changes. And Is there any way to kind of see any effectiveness of like what was kind of getting started in the, like we had the different tiers of
So-
this was going to happen in the first year, second year, and then, I don't know, COVID came about.
Yeah, and it did. And actually, Leslie, we do still have, many of those things are still going on. But we did have to pause on a few things. And I think that we've had a lot of conversation. Just last week, we had conversation about when we're ready to revisit and recalibrate. Because we think what's
Will you
probably
put white
what we need to
paper
do.
along the walls in honor of me? Just because that was always so much fun. Nancy, didn't we like those big chart wallpaper? You
We-
missed that part. It was.
We actually did have a number of discussions just last week about looking at our strategic plan and where we are and where do we go from here, because you were on a certain path
Yeah.
and trajectory, and then when, the pandemic hit, that kind of reset everything. And so we don't want to start from scratch,
Right.
because we
Got a
know that
good
there's a
plan,
lot of
yeah.
really good things going on, but it is definitely something as we continue through this year, we're looking at and evaluating. And this summer, we're going to sit down and we're going to look at, okay, what do we need to change? What do we need to improve? What do we need to look at? What do we need to throw out? What do we need to add? Those kind of things. So, again, I don't want to start from scratch, because I think there were a lot of really good things in the strategic plan, but, nobody, when you did the strategic plan 3 or 4 years ago, nobody could see what was coming, in the last couple of
Fair.
years. So that definitely has reset some things, and we'll continue to evaluate and tweak, so to speak, so.
I've seen a lot of those conversations. It reminds me of fiscal emergency, like even when we were released, we still acted,
Yeah.
that way. And so a lot of the things that we see now in the conversations that, well, COVID impacted that. And at some point in time, it sounds like you guys have already started that,
Yeah.
to say, we need to get past that,
Back
and
to
this
it.
is the way that we're going to
Yes.
operate from now on.
We
So
can't
we're-
continue to pause everything forever. We're
Yeah.
going to start going the wrong direction, so.
Yeah, and I hate to say that we're all experienced in that, right?
Yeah.
So, good job.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if you ever need community members, remember how we had the different mix-up? Now we're community members,
That's-
but we would know kind of what you're talking about. I just volunteered us.
I do want to say, our K through 3, like I mentioned earlier, the staff, they worked really hard to get the kids in, but really that was
Yeah.
across the board. And even this year, just the amount of assessments and analyzing the data and trying different approaches with the kids and trying to get them caught up. Everyone's working really hard.
Yeah.
And I know at our Butler County meeting on Friday, I brought that up when we were around the table, because we should be really proud. Our teachers and
Yeah.
staff and administrators are working really hard to do what's best for our kids.
That's great. Thanks, Jody.
Anything else? Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it. All right, we will move on to Section 6, Treasurer's Business. Mrs. Cahall.
First, I'd like to ask the board to approve the minutes from November 18th and November 22nd.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Any questions? Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 6.2,
I'm asking the board to approve the financial report for November 30th, 2021.
may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
I'd like to report that as of November 30th, the general fund balance was $32,539,529, and the ending balance in all funds was $39.2 million. And then we're pretty much where we should be at this point of the year. But I'm getting sort of tired of telling you that we don't know what the state's going to pay us.
I'm not going to miss that.
And so now they're promising January, and I really, really want to see that. Because it could be a lot of different. It doesn't include open enrollment. It includes other things. It's just so until we see that, I really. Right now we have a healthy cash balance, and I'm expecting us not to be off from the forecast or better than the forecast, but I could be proved all wrong in January. So we're looking forward to that. And I did also we're looking forward to knowing what we're going to get, at least. But I did attend a meeting also with other treasurers the other day, and Jenny Logan, who's with Lakota, who's on the Fair School Funding Plan Committee, she said, we're gearing up again, we're adding some new members, it's going to be a tough fight. We're not expecting them to, you might have heard the same thing, Robert.
Yeah.
We're not expecting them to continue after the 2-year budget. And she said there's a lot of new plans that are being introduced, and quite a few, and some are being put out there by non-educators, which doesn't make sense to me. But, you know, we kind of went into it last time thinking it may not work. I mean, they may not accept it, but we won for at least for 2 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to keep, you know, we know we've got our legislators backing us, but we're going to keep working with them, and we're going to find out as much as we can and see what we can do. And you guys can watch from the sidelines now, but we'll be fighting. So that's all I have to really report.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, any questions? All right, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 6.3.
So I'm asking the board for approval of the bond fund report.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
I'd like to report in November, we received $87,577 in homestead and rollback tax, and also $117,489 from the state reimbursement for the loss in tangible personal property. And we did pay our principal and interest in the amount of $1,627,188. And the current balance as of November 30th was $2,825,276 in the bond fund. Thank you.
For the last time, is all the money where it's supposed to be?
And hopefully not for the last time. Yes, it is.
Yeah, for the last time for me, yeah.
Yes, it will.
That's a good one, Holly.
It will still be asked.
Well played,
The
Mrs.
torch is being passed.
Okay, the
Yes,
torch
yes,
is
yes,
being
that's
passed.
gonna be one of the
What I
committee
want to see
appointments.
is, I want to see that account
Be
go to
paid off.
zero.
That's right.
and-
Yeah.
Yes,
And then nobody will have to ask that question.
that is
again.
true.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a committee? Are you going to sign that
Yeah,
to
that's got to
somebody?
be the Brett committee to ask the question.
Yes.
We had that answer on recording, though.
Yeah,
that's
just
all you have
push
to
it.
do. Anything else? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kale. Section 7, Superintendent's update.
All right, it's very brief tonight, just because we've had a number of other extra things. I just wanted to say thank you to all the staff out there. Friday is the end of the first semester. I can't believe it already. Final exams started today at the high school, and they're continuing this week. I do have to say, we have had our challenges this semester, but overall, I think it's been a really, really positive start to the school year. I guess not start, halfway through the school year. Then Friday is the last day for kids for a little while. There's a 2-week break, and I know the buildings will be closed except for some of the extracurricular activities, and central office will be sort of a skeleton crew. We'll be in and out over those 2 weeks, but obviously you can reach Mrs. Cahill or I if you need us for anything. But for the most part, over those 2 weeks, it'll be pretty quiet around here. Everybody gets some time with their families, so. And that's all I have today.
Good. Section 8, Superintendent's personnel business.
All right, first section, 8.1, hiring. Recommend to hire the following new employees. We found a couple alternate subs. They are, those are both student teachers, correct, Jesse? If you remember, we do not have to have the full college degree, so we have a couple of college kids that have arranged their schedules so they can do, 2 or 3 days a week for us, which is fantastic, so.
Great.
And then we have a long-term paraprofessional in there as well.
That's great.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 8.2.
We had one resignation. The boys varsity head soccer coach, Bob Reynolds, resigned. I know Mr. Silverman is already working on the next person for that position.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 8.3.
This section, I'm asking to approve some of the following extracurricular contracts, a couple of volunteer coaches, and one that they're splitting, but they're just all extracurriculars.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. And item 8.4.
We have one additional gate worker for the athletic events.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Section 9, Superintendent's Other Business.
All right, first item up is the approval of the master contract. It's recommended the board approve the new master agreement with MEA. This would go in effect July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions?
I just want to thank the team that worked on that, both you as board members, Tim and Dave, and then the MEA as well.
Yeah.
So I hear it went very well.
I did want to share again, I know I shared last time, and I want to reiterate what Mike said. It was a really great experience, and I've never been a part of a team where everybody really was looking out for what's best for the school district. It wasn't about what's best for me, but what's best for Monroe local schools moving forward. So it was a really good thing to be a part of.
I would like to, just please take care of that, what's in the agreement that we're going to do next year with the step schedule and everything.
Absolutely.
Really, but if everybody can take that seriously, and I don't doubt that we won't, but let's make sure that that happens.
Absolutely.
I can just say it was my first time during negotiations. I enjoyed myself. And I know you three have all been a part of negotiations in the past. And because of that relationship with Mike and you three through the course of negotiations has made what the negotiations are today. And I think that's just a respect of each other back and forth. And like you said earlier, it's just a matter of making Monroe first. And,
Yep.
and everyone in that room has that mindset, Monroe first. And as long as we all have that goal, we'll continue to be as successful as we are today. So thank you for
Very true.
I lost where I was. Anything else? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Let's see. Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. 9.2. I am choked up.
This is to approve a MOU for the MEA agreement on the contract that you just approved when it comes to tuition reimbursement. All this is doing is we're changing the language in a little bit where we're not changing the language, we're changing the dates. Because tuition reimbursement ran on the calendar year and the contract obviously runs the school year, and so we're just lining up the dates. So it all runs concurrently with the school calendar year instead of starting January 1st. It's like, keep it all easier for record-keeping purposes, so.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
I like how you just, second.
You like
Yeah,
that?
it's real quick. Second.
I like to mess with everybody, that's what it is.
Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 9.3,
I'm asking you to approve the extended salary schedule for the administrators and central office for this school year, 21-22. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Cahill, this was where they did the rollover agreement last year, but they're actually getting this already, but it was never put on the board agenda. So this is a cleanup item from last school year.
may I have a motion?
So moved?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. And 9.4, is that the one that?
That's
Yep,
the one we
that's
just
deleted.
That's what I
Oh,
thought,
yeah.
just wanted to make sure. All right, 9.5.
I'm asking you to approve the contract with American Sound and Electronics for the PA system upgrade. You see the amount there? This is our PA and clocks and bell schedule and everything has been running on fumes, I understand, for a number of years, and they've held off as long as they could. They got a number of quotes, and this was by far the best one, and it was the company that installed it originally, so they're familiar with it, and they were able to get it done. There was like a 6 to 8 week wait time on most other companies, so this was the best price, and they're coming in. They've been working on it this week. The clock said like 2:15 about 2 hours ago, so I don't know. So they must, I don't know if they've got it and it's up and running now or what, but all right. So everything should be in well working order for next semester for sure, so.
Good. May I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 9.6,
I'm asking to approve a contract with Public Consulting Group, PD on inclusive practices. This is training for staff members. It is all funded through a grant.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 9.7,
I'm asking you to approve a contract for the Butler County ESC for Union Day for a student in the amount of $28,875.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any question?
Does this include Leslie's salary down there?
He said, does that include my new salary?
That might be just a half salary right there.
Yeah, all their prices suddenly went up.
Yeah, all of a sudden, there's all these sales, yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. Tom,
Mrs.
you're funny.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 9.8,
I'm asking you to approve an extension of the online learning plan from 2021 through the end of this school year, and I'll give you a little background on this. All I have to say is ODE does not have a clue what they're doing when it comes to what they want us to do with their online learning plan, and so they keep coming out with, oh, we would like you to do this. And so this might be the third or fourth resolution you've passed on online learning. They keep changing it. This is the exact same plan you had in place last year. They're just asking that we extend it in case something happens, we would have to shut down, which I don't foresee happening, so.
okay?
But the deadline is December 15th, and we found out about it last week, so, you know,
I'm glad
That's
they're,
exciting.
that's the way
I
ODE
love their
works.
deadlines.
glad they're on top of it.
Yeah, all over it.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Dang, we're almost done.
Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. And item 9.9?
My last section here is the Neola policy updates that last month
missed
was the
those.
first reads, and we're asking you to approve.
May I have a motion?
So moved. Boy, that's good reading. I'm telling you guys, you're missing out.
Good reading if you can't fall asleep.
Second, and I'm not going to miss those.
Are you going to read them all right now?
If you would like to stay
Yeah,
after the
for-
meeting, Mr. Guide,
Let's
I'd be
read it.
happy to.
Let's go out with a bang, right? Let's make this
read them
memorable.
all
Let's
to
read it all
you,
out
yes.
loud tonight. No one else has anything
Yeah,
better to
there's
do
only-
tonight, right? Y'all came for
There's
some
only
fun.
30 attachments.
I mean, let's go. It's only 7:30. We got time. We got cake back there and
Yeah, I've already
coffee.
missed the record, so. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. And item 9.10.
That is just the calendar of upcoming events. No action needed.
Okay. And moving on to section 10, elect President Pro Tem for the January 10th, 2022 organizational meeting. It's recommended the board elect a President Pro Tem for the January 10th, 2022 organizational meeting.
Just nominate.
May I have a nomination?
Either you or Tim.
Oh, yeah, I got to bring it to the floor.
Yeah, okay.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Do you want to do rock, paper, scissors? Two of us are out.
Do your, well,
Did you already talk about what you needed?
yes.
Okay.
So,
One, two.
do,
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'd like to elect Tom
Yeah.
Lees.
I'll do it.
I second
you second that?
Yes.
Okay.
He has that look in his eye right now.
Yes, he does. Starting to look. All right.
that.
So the motion was, and a second by,
Yeah.
motion by Tim, second by Leslie, for Tom Leeds to be the President Pro Tem for the organizational
Okay,
meeting.
Tom Leeds. Okay, got it.
Just for the start of the meeting, Mary Ann.
Yeah, don't panic,
Not the
yeah.
Yeah,
whole.
just for the start.
That's great, just for the start of the
It's like
meeting.
the first 5 minutes, he's done, and then he
Going
relinquishes
down.
it.
The doctor's next to you.
That's
so-
right.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt.
We never know what Tom might do at
You never
the
know.
organizational meeting.
You
He
might want to
just
read some
take over.
policies.
We don't know.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. And before we adjourn into section 11, we'll go with the comments from the board. We'll start with Mr. Leeds.
Okay, I'm glad that we've had a very successful first part of the school year. I'm glad the contract is behind us, and again, we've talked about what these Leslie and Brett have done for the board, and they have done a super job, and wish them well in your endeavors after the boards, after you're off the board, and look forward to you coming back. As I say, we have 3 minutes for each of you at the beginning of every meeting, so
Every month.
we're good. That's all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Guido?
I mean, I could certainly say a lot, but I'll try and keep this brief, but
When are you ever
it
brief?
has been a pleasure to serve here with everybody. I was just a regular guy. I remember I went up, I've told this story before, but I went up to Chris Snyder, who was a former board member, and we put an operating levy on the ballot, and I had said, what the hell are you doing? You're raising our taxes. We had just built the stadium. What are we doing? He said, you just need to come to a meeting and see what's going on here. So I came to the meeting, and I admit, I was embarrassed that I was so far off on how it worked, that bond issues and operating levies were two different things. And I looked at Jody and I said, well, you guys got to let somebody know what's going on. So I have no trouble talking, so she wrangled me into doing it. But that's really my connection. I had no ambitions to be sitting up here, but it has been an honor, both personally and professionally to do this. I did take it serious, which I would recommend anybody that has any interest in doing it, run for election, get up here and be a very big part of your community. I've said for a long time that, a school board member is probably one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult elected position, because you're dealing with the most important thing in people's lives, which is their kids. So I never forgot that that is really what we're here for, is the kids. And I would say every board that I have served on has always put the kids first, and that's really what makes Monroe special, I think, that do that. We've talked about fiscal emergency kind of here and there. We always say it like it's a dirty little secret. I really look at fiscal emergency differently. I think that once we got out of fiscal emergency, the anger went down, the plan was hatched, the community rallied together and, passed the levy that helped us get out of fiscal emergency. That really was the turning point for our district. And I think that that's when we really grew up and became, prior to that, we were always still that new district that split away, and we were all doing that. We really hit, obviously, the wall with fiscal emergency, but then after that, we as a community came together and really got that plan together to do it. So without the help of the community, without the help of the staff certainly had a lot to do with that as well. There were concessions that were done on that, and then also the kids. The kids really, they went through a lot. Leslie and I both, our kids, Dave, your kids were there. They lost so much when they were going through that, but they kept the Hornet pride that we continue to talk about and do all that. So some stress, but I remember the positive things of that. Robert, we were joking around the other day about the pictures in the hall. You had said that you needed to maybe reintroduce yourself, thought that there wasn't actually a different board. I do look at those pictures and realize how young I looked back then, but a lot more gray hair and all that. But it's I think of the positive things and learn from the negative, but I really try and focus on the positives that we do. I guess I want to say three things to the new board members, and then also the anybody that is interested in running in the future as well, is continue to let the leaders here at Monroe lead the district. Stay out of their way. These are the professionals who went to school and have made it their life's career to do this education thing that they're doing. Just really stay out of their way, support them, and be there for them when they need it. Listen to the community. That's another thing that we learned for fiscal emergency is just really take the time and do listen to them. You don't always have to have the answer for them, but hear them out. That's the key. And then always put kids first. I'd already said that, but really put the kids first here at Monroe first. That's the whole reason we're here. So I want to thank everybody, wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I will be around.
Brett? Mr. Carpenter?
Not much to say, but again, I just want to say thank you again for everything. I don't know, I do want to say thank you to the MEA. Like Dave said, that was also my first time sitting through negotiations, and it was actually kind of fun. We had a lot of good laughs, and because the work you guys did before, it made our job a whole lot easier this time. So hopefully it's even easier next time, right, Mike? It's even easier next time?
Sure, just say sure, yeah.
But in all seriousness, just thank you to everybody, and I hope everybody has an enjoyable time off. Go relax, be safe during your time off, spend time with your family, and have a great Christmas.
Mine will be brief. Again, thank you to Brett and Leslie. No.
He's making me go last.
Oh.
Let's see if I'll cry. Cry is the bet, right?
No, that's not. No, thank you again for your service to our community and our district and everything you've done. I can't believe it's already Christmas. And this year, I just got used to writing 2021, and now I'm going to have to do 2022, and I'm going to be all messed up for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
So to the staff, thank you for everything you've done for the first half of the year. Thank you, and I wish you and your families a very Merry Christmas to everyone involved, and also everyone here in the room as well. Merry Christmas, and I'm looking forward to January, working with Debbie and AJ on the board, and we'll get you right into it.
Yep.
January meeting. So with that being said, Merry Christmas to everybody.
So-
Leslie.
Ladies last, right? Okay. I would like to thank the Academy. I've always wanted to say that. No, I'm just kidding. Staff, you guys have just made this just an amazing journey. And Brett and I, when we were running against each other, I guess technically, we didn't really know each other, but we both knew Matt, so that was funny. I would have never known all the stuff that we were going to go through on the board. I kind of knew. I grew up going to board meetings with my dad. Then I became a teacher. Then I was the nerd that liked board meetings. And yeah, and then here we were, run for office, and thought I knew what we were doing. And then a lot of things happened. Learned very quickly, never will ever the best decision I think Matt and I made was moving to Monroe. It's just a special place. Lump in the throat. I'm going to be good. This has just been great. You guys are family. Big family. I have all my wristbands on tonight. A couple of them obviously are child size because my wrists must be really big because they're kind of cutting off. So I'm going to move them back up so I can feel my hand. But the one that gets me, once a Hornet, always a Hornet. And I did not graduate here. And Brett and I always joke that he's related to basically everyone. And Matt and I are the transplants to Monroe. But our kids graduated from here. So first of all, thanks to teachers, because our kids are thriving because of being here. And that is just the best decision ever. So I'm really proud where we're leaving it. You guys are great. You're like a work family. And, it's not a goodbye. It's a see you later. As you know, you can't get rid of us exactly ever. And AJ and Debbie, you're going to have so much fun, and you're going to work hard, and you're going to sometimes feel overwhelmed, but you have the most supportive team in the world. You can ask any of them anything. You can ask them anything. You have our numbers. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to be hiding. Or you can find us at Kroger at 5 a.m. because that's usually when you catch people. And Tiffany, it's been great having you be a part of this. I know you're going to be a lot more involved as your kids are getting older. And it's so great just to see people that actually really care about our community and are really coming to meetings, not just when they have an agenda item that they need to make sure it gets passed or they want their voice to be heard. It's the consistent behind the scenes being involved. I love that. I love that there's parents that really care. This has just been an honor. It's been so much fun, and we've had the best of times, we've had the worst of times, right? But we've grown, we've learned. I think Monroe is stronger than ever, and I'm just proud to be a part of it. It's been a great ride, and I think the thing I just want to say, and I think a lot of people already do it here, is to always do the right thing, even when it's hard. Follow your gut and do the right thing. So sometimes it's hard when you have to make a decision or you have to give an opinion, and it doesn't make somebody's not going to like the decision, but you got to follow your gut and do what's right for kids, because that's what it's all about. So it's been great. See you later. Au revoir. C'est la vie. What are the things we were going to say? Bon voyage. We never did get that trip to wherever we were all planning to go, right? No. Didn't happen, but that's okay. Maybe next year. I'm just kidding. So, and Tom, I'm bummed that I won't get to sit beside you anymore at all of our meetings and things, because it's been a blast.
It has been.
Thank you, Leslie. All right. With that said, moving on to section 11, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
I didn't do it. That's good.
May I have Mrs. Kale please call the roll?
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
This could be
You
ours.
cannot keep us here.
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carries.